And now, the rest of the story. It's a quiet morning in New York City. Traffic hums. Tourists hurry past. Joggers circle the park. And there, high above the Hudson River, stands the largest mausoleum in North America. Granite, silent, almost forgotten. It belongs to a man whose name once thundered across a divided nation. Inside rests Ulysses S. Grant. But before the marble, before the presidency, before the war that would tear a country apart, there is just a quiet boy from the frontier. He was born in Point Pleasant, Ohio in 1822. His father was a tanner. Leather and chemicals, hard work, hard smells. Young Hiram Ulysses Grant hated the tannery. Hated it. But he loved horses. And it was said the boy could ride anything that walked on four legs. He was shy, painfully shy. Not the sort you'd expect to command armies. And yet, through a clerical accident, his life changed forever. And when he was nominated to the United States Military Academy, the congressman filling out the paperwork made a mistake. Instead of Hiram Ulysses Grant, he wrote Ulysses S. Grant. The S stood for nothing. Grant tried to correct the error. The Academy shrugged. And just like that, a new name was born. West Point was not easy for Grant. Not academically, not socially. He accumulated demerits, lots of them. His classmates nicknamed him Sam because of the initials US, like Uncle Sam. But Grant endured. He graduated in the middle of his class in 1843. Not brilliant, not famous, not remarkable, at least not yet. And then came the Mexican-American War. Young Lieutenant Grant saw combat under Zachary Taylor and Winfield Scott. He witnessed courage, he witnessed incompetence, and he learned something that would change history. War, chaos. And the generals who moved fastest through that chaos usually won. But after the war, Grant's life began to fall apart. He married Julia Dent Grant, the love of his life. Their marriage would endure every hardship, but hardships came often. Grant was stationed in lonely outposts in California and the Pacific Northwest, months, sometimes years away from Julia. The isolation gnawed at him. So did the bottle. Rumors of drinking followed him, some exaggerated, some true. Eventually, the pressure became too much. In 1854, Captain Grant resigned from the Army, not in glory, not in honor, but in quiet failure. He returned home, broke, and over the next several years, he tried everything. Farming, real estate, selling firewood on street corners, working in his father's leather shop, and at one point, this future president, this future general, stood in a St. Louis marketplace selling cords of wood to survive. Many considered him a failure. History had nearly forgotten him already. And then came 1861, and with it, the thunderclap, the American Civil War. The Union needed officers, and suddenly that quiet West Point graduate, the man who understood the chaos of war, was needed again. Grant started small. A colonel of volunteers, then a brigadier general. Then the victories began to pile up. A battle of Fort Donelson. Grant demanded the enemy's unconditional surrender, and the newspapers loved it. U.S. Grant became Unconditional Surrender Grant, and President Abraham Lincoln noticed. Others complained. Grant drank, they said. He was reckless, they said. Lincoln reportedly replied, "I cannot spare this man. He fights." And fight he did. From the Battle of Shiloh to the Siege of Vicksburg, Grant squeezed the Confederacy from the west while Robert E. Lee battled Union forces in the east. And finally, Lincoln placed Grant in command of all Union armies. Grant did something revolutionary. He fought everywhere at once, relentless, coordinated, grinding. And on April 9th, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, Lee surrendered. The war was over, and Grant could have demanded humiliation, but instead he offered dignity. Confederate soldiers could keep their horses. They could go home. The war ended not with vengeance, but with mercy. America never forgot that, well, at least for a while. Grant became the 18th president in 1869, and the presidency was harder for him than the battlefield. His administration was plagued by corruption, not his own corruption, but the corruption of the men around him. Grant trusted too easily, and history judged him harshly for it. After leaving office, things grew worse. He invested with the Wall Street partner, and the man was a fraud. Grant lost everything, every dollar. And then, the cruelest blow. Doctors diagnosed him with throat cancer. He was dying and nearly bankrupt. But Grant had one final battle to fight. He began writing his memoirs, page by page, in agony, racing the clock. His publisher was Mark Twain. That Mark Twain. Twain believed Grant's story deserved to live forever. Grant finished the manuscript just days before he died in 1885, and the book became a sensation. It saved his family from poverty, and even today, Personal Memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant is considered one of the greatest military memoirs ever written. And the nation mourned. Millions contributed pennies, nickels, and dollars for a monument, not in Washington, but in the nation's greatest city. So Grant was laid to rest in New York City in Grant's tomb, a monument larger than Napoleon's tomb in Paris. For decades, it was one of the most visited sites in America. School children came by the thousands. And that brings us to the riddle, who's buried in Grant's tomb? A trick question made famous on the radio quiz show You Bet Your Life, hosted by Groucho Marx. Contestants were asked the obvious, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Many froze. Some guessed wrong. But the correct answer? No one. Because technically, Grant is entombed, not buried. And beside him rests Julia. But somewhere along the way, the riddle survived and the history disappeared. Today, most Americans know the joke, but not the man, the guy in your $50 bill. Not the boy who hated tanning leather. Not the officer who nearly drank his career away. Not the failed farmer selling firewood. Not the general who saved a nation. Not the dying man riding through pain so his family could survive. Why is his story fading? Because history has a way of simplifying heroes, and Grant was complicated, flawed, human. And perhaps that makes him harder to teach in neat little textbooks. But it also makes him worth remembering, because the truth is, the real history buried in Grant's tomb is not about death. It's about redemption. A quiet boy, a fallen officer, a reluctant warrior, a dying writer racing the clock. And the man who held a broken nation together long enough for it to heal. That is what rests beneath the granite. And now you know the history buried in Grant's tomb. And now you know the rest of the story. I banker you. Good day. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. As always, take care of yourselves and each other and build that stack.